Council are here, as well as Mayor Panko. On March 28th, we acknowledge that this sacred land on which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We're grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. So with that said, are there any amendments to today's agenda? I just have one. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor. Go ahead, Councillor Alford. Sorry, I didn't see your hand at first. I can't hear you though. You're muted.
Yeah, I was going to request that the correspondence item be moved to priority item.
Okay.
But we can do that now, or we can do that when you deal with correspondence.
Well, since you brought it up, why don't we put it as, that would be 8.8, priority issue 8.8. If everyone's in agreement, can I see show of hands? Okay. That's
I count, Madam Chair?
Yes?
No, I was putting my hand up to speak. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. Yeah, I'd prefer this to be a priority item next week. We just received this letter, and I don't know if I can make an informed opinion tonight as a priority item, and then it's going to come forward next week as a motion or whatever we need to do. So this is a taxing request, and I'd like to hear from our treasurer and CEO when they have time to provide some advice or background on it. And I think that rubber stamping it tonight is too quick. We just got this letter late last week, so I'd prefer to see it next week.
How do others feel? Can I see by show of hands if you agree with Councillor Brennan? Sorry. So there's 3 of us that.
No, I just had a question, Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor McKenna.
Just if we put it to a priority and we're just going to discuss it, it doesn't necessarily mean we're rubber stamping anything or agreeing or not agreeing. We're just moving it forward for discussion as if I understand it correctly. It doesn't by putting it on the agenda doesn't mean we have to make any decision tonight. Is that correct?
Well, I thought it was going to just be a correspondence item, but when I talked to before the meeting, when I talked to Councillor Alford, she seems to feel there's some time, there's a time urgency in this. Can you speak to that, Councillor Alford?
Yeah, the first quarter in terms of, well, I guess I thought we were going to have the discussion during a priority item, but Councillor McKenna is right. If we move it to priority item and have the discussion tonight, we're not making any decisions tonight. So, and it's hardly a request for a rubber stamp. This has come to council before. Chair of the DSFBA, Karen Burns, was here and explained back in December 20th, I think she was explaining what the issues were. So I don't know if you want to have that full discussion now or want to have it a priority item tonight.
With the exception of Councillor Brennan, I think we were in agreement to put it as 8.8. It would be priority issue 8.8.
Yes.
Okay, we will do that. Thank you. Now, there's no delegation, sorry, are there any disclosure of monetary interest this afternoon? Okay, seeing none. There are no delegations. There are no adoption of minutes. There are director's reports. And I'd like to start this afternoon with Director McMunn, if that's possible. Is he with us? Director McMunn?
Yeah, I'm just, Madam Chair, I'm just having, there we go. Can you see me now?
We can't see you. We hear you.
Okay, so my video is on, but my camera is not working. So Just quickly, just a quick report on Beckwith Street Phase 2. So there was a media release issued on March 24th to advise the community of the upcoming and pending construction starting on Beckwith Street between Russell and Elmslie Street. Mobilizing and staging is happening this week as we can see outside the doors of Town Hall. Approximately 20 boulevard trees were removed the week before last. Construction is slated and scheduled to commence the week of April 4th, so that would be starting next Monday. Yeah, with Beckwith Street being closed in its entirety from Russell Street all the way to Elmslie Street, there will be detours in place for passenger vehicles via anybody traveling north. They would go via Chambers Street over to Elmslie and make their way north that way, and conversely the other way from Elmslie to Chambers, and then either go north when they come to Chambers and Beckwith to get into the DBA. I should note that all the businesses are still open during construction through Phase 1 section as well as Phase 2. So I just wanted to note that to the community and any visitors that perhaps are listening to this committee of the whole meeting this evening. Truck traffic will be detoured via Jasper Avenue to Old Slice Road and then make their way out to Queen Street and conversely the other way. That should take some pressure off the passenger vehicle detour with the trucks using that route. And lastly, the DBA will be hosting an information night this coming Thursday, March 31st in the evening for their members of the downtown business area. And the contractor, as well as the consultant and town staff, will have representation there that evening for questions and a general conversation with the DBA members. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from my colleagues? Councillor Alford, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. McMahon, you didn't mention them, but the sidewalks will be open until the last bits that have to be cleaned up. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, so sidewalks will be maintained through the construction zone, which is great, up until such time as they won't, I guess is the easiest way to say it. So towards the latter part of construction, when they're removed and replaced, obviously there'll be some disruption to pedestrian movement at that point, albeit during a good majority of the construction period, sidewalks will be open. So that's good for the community. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that.
Just one more comment, just to clarify something that Mr. McMahon said. The invitations from the DSFBA went out to the affected businesses from Russell to Elmslie for those members who are impacted by the construction itself.
Okay, thank you for that. And thank you for the update, Director McMahon, on the sidewalks. I'm having people ask me that, wondering how they're going to be able to get to their favorite stores. So that's good news. The next director report is with Director Costello. I don't see her, but I think she will be joining us in a minute. There she is.
Right here. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one quick update for council tonight. Just a reminder to residents that animal tags, the fee increase goes up April 1st. So reminding residents to get their animal tags for their cats and dogs before the April 1st deadline, when they actually double with for their fees. So we're encouraging everybody to either come in and get their tag, or they can go online and get the application online, and we can do it that way as well, whatever's easiest for the customers.
Thank you for that. Manager Crowder, are you here, Manager Crowder? Julia? Welcome. Go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So I have a number of updates for council and community today. I just wanted to send out a reminder about the notable women's nominations, which end March 31st. Nominations can be submitted online or by contacting the Heritage House Museum directly. We've had an enthusiastic community response so far and received 26 nominations to date. We also have our annual movie survey out, so we're looking for suggestions from the community about their favorite new releases and family favorites they'd like to see in Centennial Park this summer. The community can go on the Facebook page, the museum's Facebook page, or sorry, movie under the Stars Facebook page in order to vote. And voting will commence until April 9th. Movies, the same as last year, will be at dusk Thursdays in July and August, weather dependent. And we'll be putting out some communications to the community as well, just to ask for additional responses to that. The Economic Development and Tourism Department has also received notification. We've received 3 additional grants for projects related to tourism and culture development. We're unable to announce the grants at this time, but they're really exciting, and reports will be coming forward to Council in April to request execution of funding agreements. Town staff has also been working with community employment development partners to host a May job fair, similar to the one that we hosted in October. The event is scheduled for May 2nd, so we're just coordinating right now. Next week is the annual Economic Development Council of Ontario's annual conference, being held April 5th to 7th, and staff will be attending. The conference is an opportunity for economic development professionals to participate in professional development training, gain insights on trends and statistics, and provide valuable networking opportunities with other municipal colleagues to understand challenges and successes happening in other communities. Monday, April 4th is the scheduled developer site meeting for the former water treatment plant redevelopment RFP. This will be an opportunity for interested parties to view the building and development site and ask preliminary questions regarding the redevelopment. And just a reminder that the RFP closes May 6th for that. We have 4 registered participants right now for the site visit. We're also in the process of interviewing for the communications coordinator position and aim to have the role filled by mid to late April, which is really exciting, as this is the first step in the process to getting a new town website, as this role will be coordinating the project. And those are my updates.
Any questions for Manager Crowder? No? Okay, well, that was a great update. Thanks so much for that. Chief Chisbro, I believe, is with us this afternoon.
And
Welcome.
thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to provide a brief update and a correction to our emergency control group meeting that was held last Thursday. Our control group met on March 24th. Dr. Stewart was in attendance, and our new field officer, Haston Lamb, who has replaced our former field officer, Maya Foster. Lanark Leeds Grenville was reporting 15 individuals in hospital, 8 in ICU, 4 on ventilators, and a total of 86 deaths. This is an increase over the last report. However, the expectation that numbers would increase after the March break and the lifting of the mask restrictions in the public and private settings. Ontario did see a significant increase with hospitalization. 2,000 cases were reported, with 174 in hospital. Dr. Stewart provided her update. We would continue to see a decrease in regional cases and maintain a high vaccination rate. Wastewater testing rates for Smith Falls remain static with small variations in the rate. This was confirmed by our water treatment staff. And warmer weather presents a decreased risk for viral contraction and spread. Ontario as a whole is seeing decreased hospitalization rates. However, those being admitted with COVID virus are experiencing longer stays in the hospital. The majority of these cases continue to be in those 65 and older or have an underlying health condition. We're now in a time of transition, and many people and employers are navigating through new situation to determine the best course of action to protect personnel and employees. And we are still encouraging N95 masks as they provide the best barrier protection in close contacts. Dr. Stewart did advise and clarified some changes to the self-COVID testing and isolation protocols. Those experiencing symptoms and have tested positive at home have no need to retest at the 24-hour or 48-hour period. You consider yourself to be confirmed COVID positive. The change from the report that we'd sent out indicates if you had received a positive test and you're fully vaccinated, you're no longer required to isolate. That was incorrect. If you test positive, you are still required to isolate for 5 days and then wear a mask for 5 days following your positive test date. Those experiencing symptoms and negative tests should retest in 24 to 48 hours. Masks should be worn when symptoms are present and through the retesting events. It can take 5 to 6 days for a positive test after the initial symptoms have been experienced. She also advised the new information has been presented with regards to the third booster shots being for healthcare professionals, suggests users will get the most benefit from a third booster 3 months after a positive test, as the body's immune response will be more effective. One initial response to the virus has had time to settle. Public entering municipal facilities will no longer be mandated to wear a mask or be required to show proof of vaccination, but are strongly encouraged to wear a mask when social distancing cannot be maintained, and be respectful of those individuals that choose to continue wearing the mask or not. N95 masks are available to staff to provide additional self-protection when interacting with members of the public and those who choose not to wear a mask. Employees are required to wear a mask inside the municipal facilities. Employees are also reminded to continue the self-screening before coming to work and sign the acknowledgement sheet in your particular area. Virtual council and committee meetings are still in place. A report with regards to virtual meetings and protocols will be going to committee of the whole on March 28th. And lastly, probably the most major announcement is effective tomorrow, March 29th, the mayor will be lifting the state of emergency for the town of Smith Falls. This is a significant milestone, ending almost 2 years of the town-wide state of emergency, which was declared by the mayor in April of 2020. That is my update for this evening.
Thank you for that. Any comments or questions for the chief? Seeing none, thank you for that update, Chief. Our last report this afternoon is with CAO Morris. Go ahead, CAO Morris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mine will be brief. It's an update on the work that's underway to transition into the new Blue Box program, where producers will be responsible for the costs. Committee may recall that we had indicated our interest in transitioning during the first wave. There will be 3 waves, one in each of 2023, 2024, and 2025. We're slated to transition July 1st, 2023. And while that is still 15 months away, there's an abundance of things that need to get done in order for the transition to happen. The committee may recall I'm on the AMO Waste Task Force, so we've been monitoring this closely. And I can confirm that the province has, I guess, enabled these organizations to form. They're called producer responsibility organizations. They're the bodies that will be responsible for orchestrating things like a common collection system across the province. That was one of the basic principles of the new program, is everyone across Ontario would have the same type of collection and the same materials being collected. They're also responsible for making sure that processing capacity is in place for the collected materials. They'll also be responsible for reporting results to make sure they're meeting the targets that the producers have that have been imposed on producers. So they're really critical organizations within the whole transition. They've been formed. I know there have been discussions with the province to make sure that they are clear on what they need to do before the transition begins. We have been equally clear that a delay would be problematic to the start. Many municipalities, Smith Falls included, have structured our collection contracts around the transition date. So a delay to that transition date would cause problems. So the ministry is aware of that, and ostensibly the pros are aware of that as well. So the clock is ticking. There's lots to be done, but I can assure you that we're very much involved in making sure that transition happens for us on July 1st, 2023. So more to come. I'll keep a committee apprised of any changes as we move along. But I'm delighted to say we're on track finally for this transition to occur. And with that, of course, are the costs of the Blue Box program. And in Smith Falls, that's about $190,000 a year that will be transitioned elsewhere once it's fully implemented. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I I see some questions. Go ahead, Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. CEO Morris, this is maybe it's related. Anecdotally, I'm hearing more and more real shortage in raw material, and the prices for recycled material, at least I'm hearing, are going up. Aluminum, plastics, the whole works. I can't think that would be anything but positive for the manufacturers and the producers as they roll this out. Do you have any comment? Is there any downside to the demand for recycled materials going up?
Through the chair, that's a really good question. So I think, fundamentally, most of the materials are commodities and they fluctuate, based on demand. So what I would say is that we're probably approaching a robust time with certainly plastics because of their petroleum content. But I would say we need to look at it as a long game. I think overall, there's a net cost to recycling over time. So while it might fluctuate from month to month or even year to year, in the fullness of time, it's still a net cost. And I think it's in municipal interest to transition that net cost elsewhere.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Thank you very much, Senator Morris. And that ends our reports. And our first priority issue, just a reminder, we changed things earlier. So our first priority issue is going to be the Parks and Recreation Master Plan report with Director Manhire, as well as Michael Quaylen from RC Strategies. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to be bringing this forward to Council. We've had a couple of discussions on it. We've done a lot of work with the community as well as the consultant in incorporating the feedback that we've received into the document, and feel that we have a fairly good piece. Just a reminder to Council that this is the first ever Parks and Rec Master Plan. It is in the field. It tends to be kind of a standard, and it's a document that helps to guide decision-making in the field in terms of priorities and making sure that the assets that the community has serves the community well. And so as a result of that, there was a significant amount of community consultation that went into this process. And Michael has been able to kind of pull that into this document. So I'll let Michael do the presentation, and then we can have some questions afterwards if that works.
Thank you.
Thank you, Art. And I'm just going to share my screen. If this works. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of committee. I look forward to just taking you through a very high-level overview of the revised master plan that we shared a preliminary version of a few months back. Highlight the key strategies and actions, and focus specifically on some more major implementation items. The master plan was developed over about 9 months last year and early this year. And it consists of 3 different documents. The one that Director Manhire has circulated is the final master plan, the one on the left. The purpose of the master plan is to provide really an intentional forward-looking document to guide your decision-making as a council and to support staff in the planning of items, priorities that they bring to your attention for ultimately decision-making. The plan establishes some priorities based on the recognition of realities within all municipalities, which tend to be limited to your capacity, your human capacity to implement, and your financial capacity to pay for the advancement of these priorities. The plan, as Director Manhire indicated, was informed by community input and by stakeholder insights, of which I'll highlight in a moment. And it reflects the shifting demographics of Smiths Falls, industry trends that are becoming, that are tracked by our firm and the work we do across Ontario and Canada, and practices that have been demonstrated to be successful. I make point of this so that it's clear the approval of the master plan that Director Manhire is requesting is to really support in principle the general directions and priorities of the master plan, which are aligned with the town's strategic plan. Specific recommendations, project by project based initiatives would come forward from staff at a later point in time for separate approval. I have a feeling that I'm not, there we go. What screen are you, does everybody see the screen? Yeah, okay. So just to highlight resident and stakeholder input, about 221 residents responded to a survey, a coded version of the survey. That was a postcard that went out to residents. About 122 responded to a non-coded version of that survey. We had great response from youth, high school and elementary students. 145 responded. And we had 13 virtual discussions with representatives of 22 organizations. So all that input, always really important and valid and reflected in different parts of the plan and detailed extensively in the background report behind the master plan. The plan establishes 4 key principles. It's organized around these 4 key principles as well. And they reflect in many ways what we heard from stakeholders, what we learned through research, and what we understand to be a way to focus on the priorities for Smiths Falls. They're growing participation and building capacity within the system, particularly the community-based organizations that are so vital to the delivery of sport and recreation programs in Smiths Falls. Focus on policies and strategies for acquiring parkland and renewing existing parkland. Also the same for item 3, priority 3, which is renewing outdoor facilities. And that's specifically focused around your playgrounds in particular. And item 4, really focusing on the renewal and diversification of indoor facilities and providing a roadmap and some areas of focus for how that might be accomplished over time. So I'm going to take you through each one of these, starting with the first one, which is really key priorities and key actions for growing participation and building capacity. In this instance, because your service delivery system is, as I mentioned, very, very dependent on the volunteer contributions of residents who run sport programs, deliver services, and in some cases, some commercial organizations in Smiths Falls that provide programs and services for the public, your system is entirely dependent on their ability to use your facilities to provide great programs and services. And as you well know, the pandemic has challenged all of their ability to continue to do that. And so some significant areas of investment of mainly time, so the recreation department's time is to really be dedicated around strengthening the capacity of organizations to deliver some of the programs that they do, and to invest in the delivery of those new areas, specifically Learn To programs that can attract children and youth into sport and into recreation, and in the process ensure the utilization of your facilities remains strong over the course of time. There's specific things that municipalities are choosing to do now to support volunteer organizations, providing them extra supports to renew their volunteer base that might have eroded over the pandemic, and to help them initiate a recovery program. This also area focuses on pursuing partnerships with important health and social agencies, of which there are numerous in Smiths Falls, and many municipalities have found innovative ways investing jointly in the creation of community hubs or other partnerships that bring agencies together and ensure that they have the services that they need, particularly vulnerable populations need. There's also a series of recommendations in the plan to collect and more routinely analyze data to support future decision-making and facility planning. The second priority focuses around acquiring and developing parkland. The town of Smiths Falls maintains about 32 hectares of parkland. The master plan classifies as either waterfront orientated, specific characteristics of waterfront parks that require a unique kind of development, attention, and investment, as well as community-wide, town-wide, or larger serving kind of parks, and local, more neighborhood-orientated parks, as well as the trails and pathways. The overall supply compared to your population works out to about 3.8 hectares of parkland per 1,000 population. And while there's no widely accepted standard for the amount of parkland any municipality should aim to provide and maintain, planning standards that we use in our industry and advice we would offer suggests in the range of 2 to 4 hectares of parkland per 1,000 population is a sustainable level to supply. The smaller level of provision tends to be in more urbanized areas where the cost of land is significantly more than in more rural communities. So overall, you have, we believe, an adequate supply of parkland, and this is projected forward as well. But as you grow, you'll need to acquire more. And where you choose to acquire it, in our opinion, and the advice that the plan builds in, is to focus on acquiring it only in new residential communities, large new residential subdivisions, to acquire good quality, centrally located, very accessible parkland, and to immediately develop it as a neighborhood park. Things like a playground, some shade, places that people will walk to when they move into that community and enjoy, as we all know we do in parks of that kind. And the third focus area for this principle is really to complete the vision for waterfront parks, and to do that very collaboratively with Parks Canada. Focused on quality designs, focused on diversified user experiences, creating more connections through investment in the trail and pathway system along the canal. That so importantly connects those spaces to the broader community through active transportation, and your great new plan in that regard. The third priority is renewing outdoor facilities, and this is really principally focused around the significant, relatively speaking, significant investment that you will likely be making in your playground structures. Renewing them, replacing them, starting with Highland and Corbett Park and Victoria Park, and then followed by the others that we've outlined in the plan. This is a significant multi-year investment program. It's a significant capital expenditure, and it requires a dedicated reserve fund or planning to replace and maintain the new equipment that you're installing, so that this equipment always is well maintained, well looked after, and ultimately replaced much earlier than the existing program is allowed for. And with respect to indoor facilities, we recommend that you undertake, based on significant community response, one of the top rated indoor facility that residents indicated an interest for is more indoor space, multi-sport playing space. And so there's a recommendation in the master plan to undertake an indoor multi-sport facility study, to really assess the demand, viability, and model of operation for maybe an artificial turf sport court facility, and to do that only in partnership with community agencies that are vital to ensuring these kinds of facilities are utilized and are financially sustainable. Many municipalities working with their partners have undertaken, in your region, have undertaken some exciting new facility offers in this regard. And I just want to stress the importance of doing that with community partners should you choose to move down that road in the future. Also important to work with ICE users to offer introductory programs, more recreational based, 6 to 8 week, learn to play hockey, learn to skate, ways to encourage children and youth to enter the system, learn a sport, and potentially go on and play it with teams or organizations in their community. This is an important gateway and one that needs some development and attention within Smiths Falls. And finally, to monitor the utilization of ICE, particularly at the youth arena. I mentioned the importance of the playgrounds and their replacement to the overall highest priority project list, and they are, for the most part, the recommended highest priority capital projects in their entirety. Each of these in the range of maybe by the time they're complete, about $200,000 to $250,000 a project, with the larger parks probably requiring more investment than that. So it represents a significant capital program for staff and for the community to finance, but one that has significant impact on all residents and particularly children and youth who use those spaces significantly based on the feedback that was offered in the resident survey. That's the end of it. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Allen, your microphone seems to be off.
So I was just asking you to do that. So thanks for doing that. I see Councillor McGuire's hand up. Go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks a lot for everybody bringing this to us tonight. I was really happy to see the section on data about the data we should be collecting and could be collecting. Really excited to see that implemented and how that's really going to change our decision making in the future. I'm also really excited about the idea of expanding our partnerships both with community organizations and schools, and I think there's big opportunities there that we haven't been fully taking advantage of in the past. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing that coming forward. I've got some concerns with the report that I'm going to bring up, and I just I don't know if this report's going to be able to give us what we need or what a council in 5 to 10 years is going to need to make big decisions when we're talking about 7-8 figure expenditures. It starts with me for just by nature of when we had this done. Now the 2021 census data is out, and this was based on the 2016 data. So we've got conclusions like minor sports and programming for kids, we're expecting them to decline based on the report. I think like we can see at the Catholic School Board, the mistake that they made when they made that projection onto Smith Falls, and how undersized now the new St. Francis School is, and grade 7s and 8s are going to Perth for school. I think it would be a mistake to be making conclusions on that kind of information. We don't have the data on usage yet, unfortunately. So we don't know, why do we need one baseball diamond per 1,000 people? Why do we need more picnic shelters when the one that we have in Victoria Park is rarely used? Why would we need more volleyball courts? These are questions that I just don't have a good answer to, and I don't know why if we should be maintaining those assets or not. And there's cost implications to not having that data. And then just, I find there's some contradictory conclusions that are challenging to get my head around. For example, from the data, we're seeing an aging population and we want more services for an aging population, but then there's a suggestion that we should maybe look at repurposing the lawn bowling facility, where for me, an aging population, that would be a prime asset if we're expecting that demographic to grow. It goes the same way where with the youth consultation, we say we need more youth facilities, but then as I noted before, we've got expected decline in demand for youth programming. My second issue with this is the 800 meters to Parkland, because it doesn't account for schools and trails. And I think if we can get better partnerships, or if we could, where we could co-fund play structures or make sure school land is available to the public, I really see that as the way to go. And not counting the trailheads and the trails as parkland and access to parkland, I think is a big mistake, because the whole reason we're doing this exercise right now, from my understanding, is that we have struggled to maintain our park assets. We've struggled to grow our park assets and really create world-class assets to match our world-class historic sites. So I don't know that our population can keep supporting 4 hectares per 1,000 people. It says the suggested parkland in the report, the numbers range from 2.5 to 3.5, or sorry, 2.5 to 3.5 to 3.8 to 4. And that in itself contradicts itself in the report. Even if we were to grow to 11,000 people in the next 10 years, which I think would be an amazing goal, we're still close to that 3.5 provision. So I would much rather see cash in lieu getting invested into our existing parks to really bring them up to the level we want them to be at, than continually adding assets to the portfolio, adding management costs and maintenance costs to the portfolio, and just being spread way too thin the way we seem to have been in the past. Finally, I'm kind of disappointed, and I appreciate that we got this report with plenty of notice and plenty of time to prepare. But it's got errors in it. It's got spelling mistakes. It's got, in the Part 5 inventory, it's using 3.27 instead of 3.78 as the hectares per 1,000 people. The trail section is got significant issues. The Rideau Trail is over 300-kilometer trail from Kingston to Ottawa. The Ottawa Valley Rail Trail goes from Smith Falls to Mattawa. Like, these are just really straightforward things that were brought up in the last round, and they continue to plague this document. And I really hope staff are going to give this a solid read through before, if it's a push through. References to the LPAT, the development charges isn't really a thing, but we need to update that now that we've passed that at council. And finally, my last point is that for me, this misses the mark on these big picture items. For example, an indoor pool. What's the population growth when we need to start planning for this? Considering it's going to take 5 to 10 years to build a pool, when we hit 10,500, 11,000, 12,000, 15,000, what's that number that the council should be looking for when it's now we're a community big enough to justify this kind of an asset? Another big thing that's going to be a huge community engagement topic, I'm sure, is the indoor rinks. We've got declining use. We've got projected declining future use based on the data we've got in the report. And if we're going to look at transferring a rink to a multi-sport facility, what are the triggers that come up that we need to start having those studies and having those conversations? So for me, I'd be happy to receive this for information. I think it's been somewhat of a useful exercise, but it just doesn't give me the substance that I need to have confidence in the next 10 years going forward for our parks. So my recommendation would be we receive it for information. But I would not support endorsing this plan at this time.
Comments? Councillor McKenna, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councillor McGuire, for your really thoughtful, detailed response. I've got a lot out of what you've had to say, and I'm going to need a little time to absorb all that. So I hope to have a memo later from you on all that in detail. I wanted some feedback from the authors and Director Manhire on the what was it? The growing participation section. At first, when I first read it, I thought it was growing participation among our partners to make sure we get, not make sure, but encourage more more diverse and more in numbers of our community partners who can run those programs and services in our facilities. And I had to read it twice to find out, because at first, with that kind of a headline, I was looking for growing participation of people to actually use these, and it is in there. But I got confused because it's both, right? It's growing participation from our partners and our not-for-profit groups to be involved, and growing participation from the public to use these facilities. So I think I would have preferred to see those separated, because they are two different strategies. And if there was a greater emphasis on growing participation, there wasn't, other than a reference to vulnerable population, there's people that are, let's say, differently abled, or our resources right now are geared to fairly healthy or older adults. They're not necessarily people living with different abilities and different disabilities. So in that growing participation, either in this report or going forward, I hope the town of Smith Falls, in the development and the rollout, that we always consider the needs of everyone in our planning and in our growth of our parks and recreation. And I'm sure we will, but I think separating those would strengthen that particular area. It's nice to keep it to 4 areas. Maybe it's participation A and participation B, I don't know. But I had to read it twice to find out what I was really interested in, which was how are we in opening our doors and our parks to everyone. So that was one comment. I did pick up a couple of the typos Councilor McGuire talked about, and I just thought we could send those to you offline. And I think that's all I have for now. I would like to just sit with Councilor McGuire's comments for a little bit, and I may come back to that. Thank you.
Others? Go ahead, Councilor Brennan.
Thanks. And I think this is a really impressive document. And, I liked what you said, Michael, about it's a guiding document. I've got some issues about, for instance, the Civitan Park, the swings there. I can tell you they are used, and it's, but that's a decision we can make. It's just a recommendation. And the other part of it is, I think that you've got a fairly impressive response from what you put out there. Usually we might have a budget meeting and there'll be like 5 people there, and we've been to public meetings here for whatever in planning, as Wendy would attest to, that there's very few. But that, I think that you got a good cross section. And so, and I liked what you said as well about, these are recommendations. Individual projects are going to be assessed by council. And we've got some background now about who talked to you, which I just said was a pretty good number of people. And so, but going forward, I mean, I agree with most of what's in here. There's some things I don't, but I'm not going to sort of get into the weeds and pick it apart at this point. But I think that, and I also liked about what you talked about in the report about the youth center, and that, we do have to talk about replacing the ice plant at some point. I don't know what that costs. I'm sure it's very expensive. We do not have another facility, i.e. for, is it soccer or pickleball, indoor in the winter, which is a good part of our year. And so that's something that council and probably a future council will look at. So I'm happy to support this, and I think it's a great document. I know how much work went into it, and so thanks very much, and thank you to Director Meinhardt for all the work you've done on it. So We can talk about the individual things as they come up, but as a guiding document with great public participation in the making of it, it's a great document. So thanks.
Thank you for that. Councillor Alfred? I think I saw your hand go up.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I was, as Councillor Brennan said, really pleased, as the rest of us are, with how much participation you got on this, because it does inform any plan, and it does influence what council will consider. I had and I don't know that they're actual questions, as maybe some comments. I was surprised when I saw things like post-war housing park. I had to think about what that was, and I had to think about, is Hillcrest Cemetery considered a parkland? So there's some things there that I don't, I know we cut the grass at both, but I wouldn't consider them parkland. And certainly the green space, I might call them green space, but I didn't consider either of those parkland. The other thing that was curious to me, the playground replacement strategy, is there a separate report, or is all that information in here? Because if there's a separate report, I'd be interested to see it. I thought it was in there, and then it doesn't. It appears there's another report somewhere that we haven't seen yet. The other thing, you allude to it it's alluded to in the whole document, but I didn't see as much emphasis as I would have liked to on some of our parkland being dedicated to what we call wild play, and where we were going to do that, how we would do it. And if I could just give you one example, we have all kinds all winter of little kids on Beckwith Street Bridge sliding down the only hill they have to slide down towards the LeBoat office. And to me, that should be a pretty easy fix. Pick out a spot, pile some dirt on it, and let the snow do the rest in an accessible place. I am very much looking forward to seeing what the plan is for Highland and Corbett. And I know there are other things at play with Highland and Corbett, in that the RCHS has asked us to talk about potentially locating something there. But that is, who knows how far off that is. And I would be really interested, because where the playground is there now, it's not visible, it's not safe. And so if we're going to do something this summer about that one, and I'm sure Art will bring a whole plan back to us. And if things evolve and we have to change the location of it down the road, fine. That'll be that council to decide if they decide to do other things there. There was a couple of places where I just got to try and find it here, where I like the chart where you go expand, maintain, but there was one where I think it should have been expand. If I looked across I can't just recall which one it is right now. The one other question I had, I'm having trouble in this 60-page document landing on where I want to find things. Financial accessibility, what does that exactly mean? I wasn't sure. And again, I don't require answers now. You asked for comment about this and from council, and those are some of the comments that I am giving to you. Spray parks, we refer to them as 2 spray parks, but there's only one that I'm aware of. So I'm sure that we're going to hear more about that. I think those are all my comments for now. And I don't think this next question does not maybe properly belong here. But if we're considering Hillcrest Cemetery and Community Parkland, what is our plan, or do we identify the gateway at Lombard and Abbott as some kind of parkland? That entrance that I think we're planning to go down into in there. So those would be all my comments for now. And certainly Councillor McGuire has, he is an engineer by trade, and he is very detail oriented, and I very often appreciate that. So I would pay attention to some of the stuff that he brought forward to you. But as far as comments that you asked for with regard to this final, we hope, final document that will be adopted, those are mine.
Mayor, did you want me to go first?
Oh,
Did you have comments or questions?
yes, thank you. I guess at review, I think we've got what demonstrates a great inventory of assets in our community now. I think we're very thankful that those that came before us made the commitment to preserve so much public land for public use, distributed through the town, even though we have a lot along the waterfront. But they go back 100 some years ago, we had buildings along the waterfront. So the opportunity to retain those lands for public use was enable us to have what we have today. And so I think we have an abundance of assets, but as the report indicates, there's also some deficiencies and also a fair amount of renewal that is required. So I appreciate a lot of the comments in here. I think the growing participation and building capacity is important. When we look at minor league sports, obviously the barriers to the hockey, again, no house league hockey, we have some leagues for youngsters, but maybe not enough to learn to play opportunities. Same with soccer, and even with my own experience, my own kids going through soccer, by the time they got to, I think, age 11 or 12, there wasn't enough participants locally to maintain more than a team. So you go from, I guess, house league soccer here to having to travel around the broader neighborhood. And so it'd be good to understand what those barriers are. And you mentioned, I guess, supporting volunteer organizations that provide programming to the public. How do we lower those barriers? How do we, I guess, fairly lower costs? And I know there's references here to change how we charge for the use of our facilities, including our sports fields. But at the same time, we want to build that base of youth engagement that when they start young, and we maintain them as let's say, as customers for life, as they grow up and want to continue to use their assets. So I'm interested to learn more about that. New neighborhood parks, and I like the concept of having a park within 800 meters, as long as it's. I think proximity to recreation is important. So I'd like to hear some feedback on what has been proposed for Bellamy Farm subdivision. Of course, we've got some designated parkland in that space. I haven't seen a plan yet as to what that is, what that will look like and how it will be utilized. But I guess wondering how that fits into our broader park use, as well as I believe there's a small triangle of land, I think, on Lee Avenue in Farmer Meadows, which sits vacant today as part of the original plan of subdivision for that, or next. Somewhere through that plan, there was a community parkette to be located there. I haven't seen any provision for that yet. I like the concept of sort of that asset management and reserves, and making sure that we treat our park space and recreational assets like we treat a lot of other assets. So we have a plan going forward to properly maintain, rehabilitate, and replace and expand as necessary. So that's very important. And also, it's great to see some enhancements made in recent years. Obviously, the revitalized tennis courts, resurfaced tennis courts, the painting for pickleball has really enabled them to be much more utilized. The basketball courts are beautiful, highly well used. Lighting obviously is important. I see some reference in this overall for lighting, but I think I'd like to see more details on lighting, especially for lower reach. And I appreciate this is a guiding document, and I assume through art there'll be more specific thoughts coming forward for those areas, but those are critical pieces to enable broader usage. I didn't see much reference to Alexander Park, other than I think it was on the map. I think it was the only spot I noticed it, but I didn't see any recommendations regarding that. And of course there is, I think at one time a wading pool there. There's sort of a ball diamond that gets utilized by some of our community groups, but again, it's the park at the north end of town. It serves that end of the community, but there probably could be opportunities for enhancement there. And finally, just to Councillor Brennan's comments with the play structures at Civitan Park, and I appreciate that Lower Reach has some play structures now in play area and will need to be replaced, but the one big challenge we have would be people who are playing ball at Civitan Park, having the comfort and confidence to send their kids across a busy road over to Lower Reach Park. And so I think there's still merit and benefit of maintaining some degree of opportunities for kids on that side of the road to play safely. And finally, to Councillor Alfred's comment, I think, about Sledding Hill. We haven't made any reference to it here, but of course, the town did receive a donation of land from Percy Joint years ago. It was from basically at the edge of town down to Eric Hutchison Road. And it is a former suicide hill, toboggan area. And as kids, we risked our lives on there, and I guess all of us survived to see another day. But it is completely underutilized. And I can appreciate the fact it's not park space today, so it's probably not hitting the radar of this report, but something that maybe future councils can consider utilizing for the benefit of the community. So that's, I guess, it for comments. And I guess there's some questions in there, but we appreciate that can come back at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I will go last. I wrote my thoughts down as I read through this, and like others, I see this maybe as more of a guiding outlook at us moving forward in a big picture way. I was disappointed in a sense that because this is coming into my 12th year as a counselor, and I came into council from the school setting where I could see that our town needed parks and spaces and things for children to do. And that was really important to me, and it still is. And I think it's one of those easy fixes, but we've got to put money towards it and do it. We can't just keep talking about it. In this report, they talk about playground equipment. I hope we don't. I don't mind keeping the ones we have and repairing them till their end of life, which is a very short life, by the way. But let's spend our money in natural playground equipment that doesn't need a lot of money. In fact, you encourage families and children to bring their own things. Okay, you've got a few logs in your backyard, bring them over and let's do some climbing. And it's just such an easy fix, and it's so much more powerful for children than a jungle gym that you twirl around and get dizzy on and then get off and think, oh, that's okay. I don't need to do that again. Removing the ball diamonds, I don't know about that, because if I look at children that I knew as a teacher, ball diamond was one place that a group of kids could go and not have to have any money. All they needed was a ball, not even a glove, but some of them had gloves and some had bats, and they'd spend the whole day there. So let's look at our ball diamonds. We don't have to put a lot of money into ball diamonds. You know, we can just keep them, the ones that are being well used, keep them and encourage people to use them. They're things that really don't require a whole lot of maintenance. The other thing in here, it talks about a vision from water parks or waterfront parks with Parks Canada. And nowhere in here have we started that, was my question. Have we done any of that yet? And I would like to know that. It's interesting to know. It's a multi-year plan, but we need play now. We need to do this now. You know, we've been talking about it this whole term of council and the other two that I've been involved in. And let's consider, what are we going to do with what we have in the meantime? For instance, if you look at the wading pool that's over unused right now, instead of just getting rid of it, why not try it to put some kind of water source that becomes like a little water play? I mean, we used to fill it up and empty it constantly so that public health would allow it. But if it just had like a hose-like center the children that are over there could just spend the whole day running through it and have a blast. And again, that's not a whole lot of money, and it's not a whole lot of new infrastructure. And I agree with what my colleague said. We need accessible playgrounds. We need affordable. That's number one, because there are many people in our community whose children have never been able to play hockey, never will be able to, because it's too expensive. And that's just wrong. And the same thing with wheelchairs. Where do they go for those kids to play? Like we're working on our trails, and I must say, the one that when we closed off the park and we're starting to work on the trails, that's great. But I think it's something that's really worthwhile and we should keep doing. And pickleball, I walk down that street every day, and I tell you, that seems to be the most popular thing for people my age and maybe a little younger. And why not? It's so easy. It just takes a little bit of organizing groups to come out in the morning and the afternoon and play, and it's great exercise. And it doesn't cost a whole lot of money to have the equipment they need. So let's leave it there so that pickleball can continue. I guess overall, in all my reading and going through this, the one thing I hope we take away is that we need to pick where we're going to put our money this year and how we're going to do it in the most useful way and in the proper kind of way that will last. And let's do it. So if this is going to be a guiding document, which park are we going to pick to actually fix? And those are my comments. Councillor McKenna, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question to Michael. And I know you've worked across the country, and this is what you do. Is there any advice, or are there frameworks or planning tools that could help us work with? For example, we aren't the only municipality in the country that has to work with Parks Canada or the National Capital Commission or other larger bureaucracies. Are there tools or something that would help? Because I get the sense, and I don't know if it's true, that we go to Parks Canada each time we have an issue, rather than there's a broader planning framework that we've agreed on. And because this isn't going away, we're going to have to continue to work with them for many, many years, I hope forever. Are there tools or memorandums of understanding or guides that you could think of that might help us with our relationship with our federal friends?
Through you, Madam Chair, I would start by building that waterfront plan at the lowest level of detail that the town of Smiths Falls and Parks Canada could agree to, in terms of designating the locations for potential new projects, amenities, the locations of them. All of those very nitty-gritty things are very important to Parks Canada. They have their own standards, they have their own processes, and a lot of those decision-making systems that they have to approve all of those things could ideally be all approved in principle at one time. So that approach is difficult, it's arduous, but it's the right approach to take in an instance like this to provide Councillor or Director Manhire and team an ability to just plan to replace things and know that they don't have to go through an uncertain approval process for every particular item.
Director Manhire, did you have a comment?
Yes, Madam Chair, it's a good question by Councillor McKenna. We have had discussions and continue to have discussions on a regular basis with Parks Canada, and unfortunately our projects do tend to be kind of one-off. So this kind of document helps us in letting Parks Canada know what our priorities are and what we would like to do. And to their credit, one of the things that has come up on a regular basis is that the need for archaeological surveys, as an example, anytime we do anything in a park along the waterfront. And they've agreed to do an archaeological survey of the waterfront going through town, so that when we do have projects that we bring to them, they know the likelihood of whether that, is needed or not. And, as an example, we put benches in along Centennial Park last year after we got approval from them to be able to dig up to put the pad in, because they realized that that area was actually infill put in there, and so therefore didn't, had a very low likelihood of containing archaeological artifacts. So those discussions are happening, and we are getting to that point. And I think one of the things in this document is that it tries to highlight our processes, and there's many kind of irons in the fire here in terms of how we approach our business, and the idea of building relationships with the service delivery organizations, the facilitation that we do with those groups and with community groups that come to us with ideas on how to enhance the services for the community. And we work with them to be able to do that. So there's a lot of different approaches here that we're trying to capture in terms of these are our strategies going forward. And we're not looking to, to get into real detail on each park specifically and what that looks like. And there are some considerations, and I know our insurance company is doing backflips right now, with us just even talking about sliding hills as an example. So there are some major issues there in today's world with those kinds of amenities. But the idea is, what kinds of amenities can we make that are going to react quickly with the community? We do have 2 projects on the go this year. We have a tender out right now, or an RFP out right now, for playground structures that has gone to the natural playground structures kind of companies, and hopefully they'll be submitting a proposal for it that will come back to council for consideration. And those pieces are constantly on the move, and they're constantly part of our rationale in terms of how we approach the business of enhancing services for the community. And it's not the benefit of this kind of document is to allow us to take a look at the community as a whole, look at the growth, look at the proximity to different services, the way that we have services now. I think the mayor mentioned Alexander Park. One of the issues there is, we want to regenerate and renew that park. We want to do it so that it meets the community needs in that area for the long term. So does that include the pieces that are currently there? Maybe, maybe not. But until we engage with that community and go through that process, we don't know. And that's something that will come back to council beforehand. We'll just use the process identified in this document once council approves it, so that we can approach each piece in a meaningful way and affect positively the experience and quality of life for everybody in the community.
Okay, I think that everyone has had an opportunity to speak, and it seems to me that the majority of us feel this is going to be a guiding document that helps us move forward, but that we would really like to see specifics about how we're going to do that. Does that make sense, Director Manhire?
Yes, and the specifics would come forward when we prepare that piece. So as an example, the next one that's going to come forward is the playground designs of what we're going to replace. We've done an assessment of all of our play structures in the community, and that's one of the reasons why Michael included that as part of this document, because we haven't had that investment for a number of years, and a lot of the structures don't meet the current standards. So we are under obligation to do something about that. And we are, as staff, to try to fix kind of what's there, but the ultimate goal would be to replace that with meaningful pieces for not only safety, but also for use in the community.
Thank you. Councillor McGuire had his hand up. Go ahead, Councillor McGuire.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just had a question on, we've got, I guess, play structures out for design in the community. This plan's advocating for community consultation before designing these kind of things. Have we done any consultation with the neighborhoods that these structures are going to go into before putting the design out?
Yes, and we haven't put a design out. Just to be clear, what we've done is we've done an RFP. So we've gone to manufacturers and said, we have this space. Here's the community demographics. What do you suggest that could work there? And then once we get those pieces back, then we'll go out to the community and say, here are, however many we get in terms of options for those spaces, and that would come to council as well, so that everybody gets some feedback into the process.
Excellent, thank you.
Councillor Alfred, go ahead.
Just really quick, Madam Chair, because you had said that the consensus was that we view this as a guiding document, which of course it's a master plan, but also several people made suggestions about changes to this master plan or things that should still be looked at.
Yes.
And I think both Michael and Art were madly taking notes as we were talking.
I think so.
Sure.
That's right.
Thank you.
And I think Councillor McGuire is going to share that information that he gave at the beginning of the, if I understood that to be correct, you're going to send that to us? Yes?
Sure.
Okay.
I guess
Thank
one final thing, could we get a map of 800 meters off our trails, our schools, our parkland, just so we can really visualize what the problem is here? That would be helpful if it's easy to put together.
And I'm just going to end by saying too that a few years ago, actually 2 terms of council ago, we, with the citizens in Highland Park, were already creating a natural playground. I had taken trees down and cleared away an area. It has since been changed. Anyway, I think that area would be a great place to start because it's large. It's in very much a need of somewhere for children to play that's safe. The jungle gym that was sent there, it has not lived well because it was an old used one. So in my opinion, that would be a really great park to start with. Anyway, all right, thank you everyone. Now remembering that we have changed the order, 8.2 is court security and prisoner transportation transfer payment agreement. And the material that we were given, Director Costello has a letter and some information, but beside it, I have Mayor Penko and Councillor McGuire's name. So Mayor Penko, can you explain, are you going to speak to this?
I think Councillor McGuire is.
Councillor McGuire, okay.
I'll do the signing part, he can do the explanation.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a grant program from the province that we deal with every year. It's only for $2,700, so it's a very small amount, and you have to wonder if all the administration that goes into getting this thing signed is worth the money we get for it. As part of the court security and prisoner transportation program, overall $125 million is going to municipalities across the province. And part of getting this $2,777.04 is that we will have to report back on the provincially identified performance measures and indicators as required in the transfer payment agreement. So the letter and the transfer payment agreement have been distributed to council, and if everybody's in favor, we can pass that tonight because it needs to go back to the province before March 31st.
Councillor Alfred?
Yeah, free money, I'll support whatever gets us free money for sure. I did think it was odd. When we saw this, I reached out to Councillor McGuire and said, what's this about? Because normally we receive some kind of a report from staff. He was good enough to send all of council the 2 reports that were with us, but I was thinking, well, shouldn't the police services board itself or the police service to give us a report like any other staff would be when they're asking for our involvement? It's a comment. It's a rhetorical question. Let's call it that.
I gathered that. Any other comments? I saw Mayor Penko putting a thumbs up. Are we going to put this forward onto our meeting tonight? I see it's coming forward to it for us. Oh, we just did it. Sorry. So I need you to vote on it. I'm sorry. I agree. So there's Peter, myself, Mayor Panko, Wendy Alford. All right. So that's what's going to happen. So 8.3 is the Drinking Water System Summary Report, and that's with Manager Barlow, Manager of our Water Wastewater Treatment. Manager Barlow, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Thank you, members of Mayor, members of Council. Tonight I bring forward report 2022-036, and it's our 2021 Drinking Water System Summary Report. The purpose of this report is that it's to satisfy legislative requirements. We must provide the owner, which is Mayor and Council and members of the public, our operating authority, top management, with all the information for the water treatment subsystem and the water distribution subsystem for the operational period of January 1st to December 31st, 2021. The report includes 171 pages of information. I'll go over some of the highlights from the report and some of the requirements that we have. Of note, the municipal drinking water license and drinking water work permits were renewed in 2021 and came effective June 30th. So that was an application we made to renew the license and the permit from the province. That is to be renewed again after 5 years. So in 2026, we will go through the same procedure to renew those pieces of documents again. We had our 2021 inspection on October 26th, and we received an inspection rating of 99.2%. We're still looking at achieving that 100% goal. I'm sure we will get there sooner rather than later. So that is where we look to move forward to. In our report, we have a summary of flows. So as you can see, 2021 was a good year for our quantity and our flow rates for the town's water systems. We actually pumped the lowest amount of water since the new plant came into service. I go over some more detail when we talk about the water loss reporting, but those numbers are promising, and it shows that we're moving in the right direction. In February of this year, our annual report was produced and put out for public viewing on our town website, as well as Montague was giving a copy of the report. That's required by regulation to be done prior to February 28th of every year for the previous year, and on issues relating with more detailed information on the system analyzers, requirements, and all the testing and stuff that we go through for the water systems. And in addition to our summary report over the last 3 years, we also added the benchmarks from the service sustainability review. So at the back of the report, we go with the operational cost per cubic meter billed. You'll notice that cost was reduced this year. A lot is because of the benefits from the water that we did not pump from the system from previous years as well. So that reduced our budget. If you go back to the service sustainability review, it did show that there is a savings of about 28 cents per cubic meter for water that we do not pump into the system that gets lost in the system. So with those numbers, if you look at the 350 or 385,000 liters that was not pumped into the system in 2021, with that 28 cents, it's approximately $100,000 that was saved through the treatment and the process for operations. And that is seen in the budget line for the facility with the unaudited budget numbers presented from Treasury. And there is some other items on there with like those costs or savings in chemical costs. Our hydro is greatly reduced because we use electricity to pump the water through the system as well as out into the distribution system. So a lot of hydro is used. So the less water we pump, the less it's going to cost us to pump that water. And going from that, I guess that's a quick summary. If there's any questions.
Councillor McGuire, go ahead.
Thanks, Jason. These reports have definitely been one of the best news stories of our term of council. Every year, the numbers get better. I had a question on the operational cost per cubic meter billed water and cost per cubic meter treated water. Does the billed water number include all of the spilled water? That's our total number of liters divided by the revenue, or I just want to make sure I get the numbers straight in my head. And
Yeah,
then
both of those. So through the chair, the numbers that I use for the billed water, so whatever our billed consumption is, and that's divided by whatever the cost for operation minus the transfers to reserve, capital, and loan and interest payments. So it's pretty much just the operations divided into the actual billing numbers from the meters.
Okay, and I'm wondering we keep seeing these numbers coming down every year. When can we expect those numbers to stabilize, and what kind of where do you want to see them before we start to see consistent decreases or no more decreases?
Yeah, like I said, if you look at the water loss reporting that we're doing, non-revenue water is still at 50%. So for every cubic meter that we're billing, we are either using in the system as required non-revenue water or metered non-revenue water, or just water lost. Again, the average for most water systems runs around 30%. So we still have 20% that we hopefully can reduce based on the information that we have for the distribution system and some of the equipment that we've purchased to kind of make those efficiencies easier found. I'd say over the last year, I know Public Works has worked extremely hard in finding the leaks and taking care of the leaks. But I think a lot of the low-hanging fruit per se was found last year. So we have to do a lot more investigation and more digging to see those numbers come down in the future.
Great. No, this report's a real credit to you and Sarah and everybody else that worked on it. So thanks a lot.
Councillor Alfred, go ahead.
Yeah, just I want to echo Councillor McGuire, because you and Sarah and the staff at both of these plants, we have seen it come down. When you first told us what our non-revenue water was back 3 years ago, it was a bit of a gut check, and you've done made wonderful strides there in your inspection rate, in our adverse quality incidents. We didn't have any, and 4 complaints that were out of a town of close to 10,000, I think is stellar work on behalf of the water wastewater plant. So good for you, Jason and Sarah and all the crew there. In some difficult times, the last 2 years have not been easy. We recognize that.
Mayor Penka, did you have your hand up?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Just to echo what's been said, a great report. And as much as I'm encouraged with a mark of 99.22, I'm happy you're striving for 100. So never satisfied with the status quo. And it speaks to some of the reasons why we are in the position we're in here. Very encouraged with the reduction in basically non-billed water and non-revenue water and the water that's had been going into the ground. Two questions, I guess. One, the infrastructure leakage index. If you can explain what that means and what those numbers mean. And secondly, you mentioned we've really been able to get most low-hanging fruit when it comes to leaks. And of course, the Beckwith Street redevelopment made a major difference there. And perhaps we'll find something else in phase 2, and probably, I assume, on George Street when we tackle that, that'll also likely indicate stuff. But can you speak just to maybe some of the limitations for that equipment? I mean, I assume it's not going to locate everything with 100% accuracy, but regardless, I know it's been an incredible investment. It's paid off in perpetuity, the major difference in the cost of producing water. So just speak to those two, please.
Sure. Yeah, through the chair. The infrastructure leakage index is an internationally used value. It's a grading system. So 0 to 2 would be an A, 2 to 4 would be a B, 4 to 6 is considered a C, and anything greater than 6 they have a number sequence that's not quite standard there, but they say the 6 previously, but then anything greater than 8 is a D. So you can't, I guess they did that so you can't fail. But a D is something that you have lots of work to do. But reducing that number to that 4 to 6 range, I think is really great for the operations and the staffing to be able to see that number reduced by that amount. As for the equipment that's used, so in 2021, we purchased some correlation equipment for leak detection because majority of our leaks don't surface, so they're all underground. And just as a quick number, I think we had about 20 breaks or leaks between mains and services, and less than 10% of those actually surface. So 90% of those leaks and breaks, the staff located through sewers and the use of the correlation equipment that we're using. I have to say that the first day they used it, they found a leak on a service line pretty close to the plant. And the owner said they've been hearing a noise for 5 years, but never said anything. We were able to locate the leak, fix that leak. So we figured that equipment paid for itself pretty much the first time we used it. And so moving forward, staff, they're out there on a regular basis, sounding hydrants to find leaks. I think a lot of the leaks moving forward are going to be a little harder. Maybe they're not as loud of a noise. So it works off of the noise and the vibration off the pipe for the correlation equipment. So it's a little more troubleshooting that has to be done if we have to kind of do some pressure testing in the area to see if we notice a pressure drop when we isolate an area to see if there's a leak in the system, or there's some other avenues that we can take moving forward when we do valve inspections. If there's like packing leaking on a valve that was installed in the 1920s, right? That's something that we need to look at having capital funds to replace moving forward to kind of help us out with those small leaks. Like a small drip uses a lot of water. So these leaks that are 3/4 of the way around a pipe that are spraying out at 60 or 70 PSI, that's like 200 cubic meters per day on average for one of those leaks. So it's a lot of water when you look at some of the holes and different things in the system that we have to repair.
Well, thanks. And I would suggest when we're at 15.5 in 2017, that was probably an F. But they don't give it the failing grade, but going from there to 5.6 is great. So thanks for all your efforts and you and your team.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great report, Jason. I agree with everyone and well done. And I hope the public do take the time to read this report. It's long, but we really do need to watch this file on a regular basis for so many reasons. I have a question about this year, which it really isn't about the report. It was for last year. But are you seeing impacts? We're noticing a lot of supplies and supply line and products are very difficult to acquire. Are you having any concerns? How is inflation hitting your chemicals and your resources? And are they actually available? Do you see any major threats that you want to alert?
Right now, there's, through the chair, right now, there's nothing major to report. We have provided information to council about some increases in costs. Our chemical costs increased by 12% last year. With product demand, we are waiting for materials a little bit longer, but they are still available. It's not like we're not able to get them. It just may take longer to arrive on site. We have kind of put on hold some of our capital items this year to see if the prices do start to come down, because there has been an increase for distribution costing. And so we're holding off to see if some of those numbers do drop before the end of the year prior to looking at finishing those capital items.
Thank you.
Well, I agree with my colleagues, Jason. You and Sarah and your staff do wonderful work, and you allow us to get good night's sleep, not be worrying about our water quality. So thank you so much for today's report. And that will be coming. Oh, sorry, Councillor Brennan, did you want to add something?
He and Sarah, the other group, keep us out of jail.
That's
the
right.
buck stops with
And
us,
yes,
guys.
when
Thank
we
you,
did our
Jason, for
council
that.
training, we heard about some of those scary things. So
That's right.
you allow us to sleep at night, that's for sure. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 8.4, appointment of municipal bylaw enforcement officers for the town of Smiths Falls report 2022-37. That's with Clerk Bennett. Thank you.
Good evening. So tonight I'm just here to update council on recruitment of 2 full-time bylaw enforcement officers for the town of Smiths Falls. Staff have advertised for these 2 positions and successfully hired 2 individuals. So tonight we're here seeking council approval to bring forward a bylaw to appoint Paul Klassen and Scott Sabrin as bylaw enforcement officers for the town of Smiths Falls.
Councillor McGuire.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I had a question for CAO Morris. It was noted in the background that this is under the Police Services Act, and I was wondering if there's municipalities that provide these services through their police service, or if it's usually under corporate services, or if there'd be any opportunities for cost savings or any kind of advantages to corporate services versus the police service for bylaw.
Through the chair, it's in my experience quite typical for bylaw to be delivered through the municipality as opposed to the Police Services Board, because the range of bylaw enforcement spans beyond the Police Services Act. So I think it makes sense there. I wouldn't expect any cost savings if we were to do it differently. So my opinion is it's well placed where it is presently.
Okay, that will be coming forward today, I believe. Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thumbs up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 8.5 is automatic aid agreement with the Township of Rideau Lakes report, and this is with Chief Cheeseborough. I think Chief's there. There he is. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to precipitate this report is actually going to spur discussions with regards to a second report that I withdrew for tonight's meeting. This report may impact the current situation with the tanker that we have. That was discussed in 2021 budget period, and it was deferred. So some of the items contained within this report may or may not affect the tanker replacement, and again, that could be for further discussion. My recommendation tonight is that council authorize staff to enter informal discussions with staff from Township of Rideau Lakes to review and update our automatic aid agreement covering the geographical area previously known as South Elmsley Ward. The purpose is to request council approval for staff to review and discuss and updating the existing automatic aid agreement with Rideau Lakes staff. In the background, in 1990, the town of Smiths Falls entered into an automatic aid agreement with the Township of South Elmsley to provide fire protection services for a 5-year period. At the conclusion of the first 5-year period, it was extended for a second 5-year period and has continued each year on a yearly basis. The agreement that's in place now did have an expiry date of 2010. This agreement has continued on a yearly basis as per the agreement. And over the course of the last 12 years, there's been a number of discussions regarding the updating and renewal of this agreement. As a result of amalgamation and staffing changes, there has been no significant changes to the agreement. The agreement has provided a mutually agreed level of service with a cooperative approach to public safety. Discussions were initiated in early 2021 between both municipalities with the intent to modernize the agreement and make adjustments to the specified services listed in the agreement Minor changes in communications and notifications between both municipalities have been made this past year. There has been an average of 49 responses per year over the last 4 years. In 2021, activated alarms and cancellation en route represented 50% of the call volumes into the Rideau Lakes area. For the past 32 years, the automatic aid agreement has met the intent of the original agreement to dispatch the closest department to any type of emergency. I provided 2 options in the report. And the first option is to leave the existing agreement in place. This would mean we are responsible for a number of items contained in the 2005 agreement. And this option 1, I am not recommending. In that original agreement, it required 3 apparatus and 10 firefighters be sent to every emergency. There's certain situations and emergency responses that do not require 3 apparatus or 10 firefighters to respond. The apparatus staffing requirement for minor calls would leave Smith Falls unprotected if we were to deploy those 3 vehicles and the 10 firefighters. There has been no increases for service each year other than the CPI index since 2010. Fire determination and investigation was listed as a responsibility of Smith Falls. This is typically the responsibility of the host department under the FPPA and the fire code. Public education and community events is also listed as a Smith Falls responsibility. And the issuing of fire permits for Rideau Lakes is listed as a Smith Falls responsibility. Option 2, of which I'm recommending, would be responding with the appropriate number of apparatus to the emergency. Staffing would be based on the type of emergency. Negotiate an annual increase for service that is appropriate based on the operating expenses, wages, and CPI. Removal of the fire determination investigation. Public education and community events would be the host department responsibility. Certainly, if we were available for that, as well as fire investigations, if they needed our assistance, we'd be more than happy to assist with that. And to remove fire permits, because fire permits that are issued, there is a requirement to inspect prior to issuing any fire permits. Because it's based in Rideau Lakes, again, this is a Rideau Lakes responsibility. The budget and financial implications in 2021, revenue from the current agreement was $70,763.68, with the annual adjustment is based on the December CPI index. Now, one item that's important to recognize along with this is since the inception of this agreement with Rideau Lakes, there has been no money set aside for vehicle replacement. In 1995, the tanker was agreed to be replaced between Rideau Lakes and the town of Smith Falls, and that was a co-pay for the vehicle. The total cost of Smith Falls and Rideau Lakes at that time was $70,000. But contained within the current agreement, Smith Falls is responsible for the maintenance, responsible for the housing, and responsible for anything to do with that tanker. In the event that the agreement is dissolved or it's altered or modified, which would remove the tanker, in the existing agreement, Smith Falls would have the option, if they chose to keep the tanker, to have it evaluated by 3 evaluators and pay Rideau Lakes that evaluated cost. The other option contained within the agreement is we could give the tanker to Rideau Lakes and receive no money in return. Certainly, it's not an equitable option based on the current agreement. So therefore, my recommendation tonight is to initiate the talks with Rideau Lakes and have discussions, bring this current agreement into current day standards, and certainly that reflects our capabilities as well as Rideau Lakes' capabilities.
Thank you, Chief. Councillor Alfred has a question. I see some people putting their hands up, but let's.
Not a question, Madam Chair. I support the Chief's recommendation. If it hasn't been apparent up till this time, that I and other members of council, when you find a decades-old agreement, the first thing we should be doing is looking at it and pulling it out and getting the best deal for Smiths Falls. So yes, I support the chief's recommendation.
Any other comments before we vote? Mayor Panko, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. And to look at the details of option one, I think it's not a great proposition for our community. Now, I start my comments with the reality that we're happy to support the people, certainly the South Elmslie Ward of Rideau Lakes, and recognize we are the closest department able to provide the quickest response for most of that area, and also recognizing that it would be an incredible capital cost and ongoing operational cost to Rideau Lakes if they were to have to establish another fire hall in the South Elmslie Ward. So I think it's a good neighbor thing to do what we can, but at the same time, it can't be a losing proposition for us. And speaking to the tanker, obviously a tanker has incredible value in a rural area where you don't have fire hydrants, but doesn't have the same value within our own community where we have fire hydrant supply of water in the event of an emergency. So I'm glad that is part of the discussions. But looking here again, as Councillor Alford said, it's a 30-year-old agreement. I'm not even sure what the foundation was for the cost that was established originally, but obviously Rideau Lakes has had a large number of homes built in the last 30 years, but the costing formula hasn't even changed to reflect a growing population, more commercial establishments, and more homes. So no, I'm happy to support the recommendation that was held, and of course embark on a journey with Rideau Lakes to come up with what will be a better agreement, more equitable for our side. They can still provide, of course, the important emergency response needs for South Elmslie Ward of Rideau Lakes.
Any other comments before we, okay, those in favor of bringing this forward tonight to our, okay, thank you, I will do so. 8.6 is council and committee meeting participation report, and again it's with Clerk Bennett. Go ahead.
So Councillor Allen, I just wanted to note that item that Chief Cheeseborough just presented isn't on the council agenda.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to confirm that action.
So that will be coming forward at a later council meeting.
Yes.
Is that right? Yes.
Yeah. At this point, you're just giving him directive to negotiate. So that's
okay. Thank you. So
Okay.
go ahead with 8.6.
All right. So tonight I'm here to seek council approval to continue with the electronic method of participation for committee of the whole, council, committee, board, and task force meetings until the town hall phase 3 renovation has been complete. So as you're aware, council has and our committees and boards have successfully been hosting meetings in a virtual format since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. On average, the municipality live streams 10 virtual meetings a month, including council meetings, committee of the whole, and our committee, board, and task force groups. Our third-party live streaming provider has confirmed that viewership numbers continue to grow from September 2021 to March 19th, 2022. And I've included the statistics in the report, but just a high level on Facebook, there's been 82,800 minutes watched. And out of that, 37,891 minutes were watched live. The municipality gained 202 new followers, and all the traffic is considered organic traffic, which is natural unpaid traffic. And then on YouTube, we had 4,400 views, 978.7 hours watched. You've gained 47 new subscribers. And again, it's all organic traffic. When the municipality lifts the declared state of emergency, an amendment is required to our procedural bylaw that would need to be made, should council wish to maintain the virtual format. And so staff have reviewed different options of where we could host in-person meetings in the interim as phase 3 is under construction. Staff have reviewed different spaces, including the Memorial Center upstairs and the Welcome Center. All possible spaces would need to be set up for each meeting, as well as dismantled after the meeting. The available spaces would also need to be used for our committees, boards, and task force as they follow the same procedural bylaw as council. And there is a bit of concern there that the spaces may not be available when the groups meet. As you're aware, council meets in the evening, but our boards, committees, and task force groups meet in the evening and during the day. So depending on the location, we'd have to attend and do different setup and removal of the setup following the meeting. We've also reviewed hybrid options where members would attend in person and some members may attend virtually. Spacing requirements were reviewed in the in-person area to ensure that there was sufficient space for council, the public, and delegations, as well as staff. And then we also, again, we reviewed the space at the Welcome Center and the setup that could be formed there for these types of meetings. And we review costs to have the meetings set up with microphones, recording options, and live streaming capability. This would include screens for those attending virtually. And again, all the microphones and that so that the audible functions would be heard. So in an effort to maintain an open and transparent method that is open to the public during the phase 3 construction, staff are recommending that council maintain the virtual meeting setting. This will ensure that we do not limit the number of in-person attendees or incur additional costs for technology, and further extend internal staffing resources and determine space that's available for not only, again, council, committee of the whole, but as well as our boards, committees, and task force. Once construction is complete, council can welcome the public back to their newly renovated space, and the chambers will be accessible to everyone. So tonight we seek your directive on this, and we're open for questions.
Councilor Alford, go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yes, I support staff's recommendation for all the reasons listed in the report. If council chambers were finished, I'm sure we'd all be voting to go back to in-person meetings. But right now, it doesn't seem that it is the best option for us. So is to continue with what we've been doing. Your recommendation, though, has an addendum to it, and it says, and that staff be directed to include a hybrid meeting option in the new procedural bylaw. I would suggest to my colleagues that that is a separate conversation that we should have. We are going to continue with virtual meetings now until we can get back into council chambers. And it seems to work fairly well for a lot of our committees, the virtual option. But in terms of a hybrid option going forward for both committee and council, I think that's a separate discussion.
And Councilor Brennan.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is the best solution in a bad situation. But when you look at the numbers given in terms of people watching, it's a hyper transparent situation we're in. I'd like to see that maintained when we get to the chambers. And I think I've been asked the question before, but when we go to chambers, the capability is there to live stream the meetings. Am I correct? Yes. And also to record, and save them. And there was some slick thing you could click on an agenda item and watch the discussion at that time. So that's really great. I think that it will be great. And I think a little more patience is in order here. And, in terms of the COVID, I don't know that we're totally past it. We're rounded the corner, but from what I'm hearing and anecdotally and otherwise, it might not be the time to get back in person anyway. So I support your recommendation, Nadine. And in terms of the hybrid, I'll use the example of the Ottawa Police Services Board, who are meeting, I think today for the first time in person. And there was not a opportunity for a hybrid option for that. And I think there's a little bit of pushback there because there's the first meeting after the convoy crisis last month in Ottawa, and I think there are many groups that wanted to participate. So I think the hybrid option is worth talking about, and I look forward to talking about that going forward. But I support your recommendation. Great report.
Mayor Panko, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, yeah, sorry, I didn't hear the first time. Yeah, I also support the recommendation, and I think, I mean, 25 months ago, we never would have contemplated meeting virtually. It just would never have been a consideration. But I think we've learned over the last 2 years that we can be probably just as effective in this environment, probably certainly as transparent and open as any other opportunity, despite the challenges that COVID has brought. And like others, I think if our council chambers were finished today, I'd be happy to move back into them. But I also don't think we can justify a cost of up to $8,000 a month in order to be able to meet personally and still ensure that we can be viewed online by the public. So considering all the factors, it makes sense. And I think we've also learned through this when it comes to the variety of committees that we all have and we all sit on. I think it's much easier to attract and engage committee members when we can do it virtually. They're able to pause maybe from work where they are or pause from home and tune in for a meeting and participate actively and then go back to their other work when they're finished their meetings. And I worry, I'd be a little bit concerned in the future as we move away, if we don't have a hybrid model for some of these groups, that we may have lower participation. We have a harder time recruiting members for some of our boards and committees. So I look forward to that discussion at a later date. So like Councillor Alfred, I'm fine deferring that portion right now, but I'll support option 1 here tonight.
Okay, those other people who, did you want to say something, Councillor McKenna? Are you wanting to vote?
Councillor McGuire had his hand up long before I did, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm getting
But I do have a comment, so okay. I might as well go ahead. Just
go ahead. Go ahead. You're already speaking.
Yeah, I'm reluctantly going to support the staff recommendation, and I do want to support Councillor Alfred's suggestion that we take that one virtual participation off the table tonight. And I do know that there is a lot of, I won't say a lot, there is some research going on. So I don't want to rely on our anecdotal information on when we revisit that. There is some research going on to the effectiveness of the virtual models, and it's convenient for us, and it seems on the surface to be good. I'd like a little more hard evidence rather than my opinion on what works and what doesn't. I know Kingston, the municipality of Kingston, did a report, I think 1 year in, saying, well, how is this working? It was an in-time research, and there was some lessons and they tweaked some things. So if there's other work that's out there that's not too difficult to get a hold of, I would like to see it accompany any discussion on virtual participation down the road. So thank you, Deputy Clerk Bennett, for this, and I'm fine with it for the next few months, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McGuire, go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I agree with Councillor McKenna's comments on the data. I think it's going to be a difficult conversation balancing some of the wishes of specific committees to meet in person. I think after watching certain committee meetings like the property standards meeting, it would be a huge loss to not have these things recorded on the internet in the public realm for the sake of accountability and transparency. Because our committees hold a lot of soft power, and they have a huge role to play in the democracy of the municipalities. So I think that's a conversation, but I agree postponing that conversation. I support the status quo. My only comment is the numbers seem really high for live streaming, and I think we're paying $200 a meeting to live stream this meeting. I'd really like to see more staff getting trained on how these systems operate. I think these systems are the future for internal meetings, external meetings, staff, council alike, and I don't like that we have to rely on these consulting firms with these big numbers to get the job done. So especially when we've got a communication staff and an IT staff recruitment, I think, happening right now, I'm hoping that we can really expand our base and our knowledge base at the town hall for this stuff.
Good. Thank you for that. Well, this is coming forward at our council meeting coming up shortly, and it certainly looks like we're all in favor of continuing as it is, and we will have the other conversation at a later date after we can look at some research and think about that. So thank you, Rick Bennett. Our last item this afternoon, this evening now, is 8.7 Federal Contribution Agreement, Beckwith Street Phase 2 report with Director McMahon. Welcome. We can't hear you, Director McMahon. I think we're moving to another room.
Of course, the irony is if he was in the room, we would all hear him, and we know that. We know it. We know it. Technology.
CEO Morris, can you do it?
CEO Morris has his hand up.
I can, with the permission of the chair, I could get started.
Yes, that would be helpful. We have another meeting coming up, so.
Yeah, so I'll cut to the chase. We applied for funding for the Beckwith Street project, and we're successful. It's a total of $750,000, and we have to match it 1/4 of it, 250. We have that already in the budget, so we're simply seeking direction to sign the agreement. And that's the purpose of tonight's report.
Thumbs up. Great, so that's coming forward in a few minutes. I need a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, you have 8.8.
Oh, I'm so sorry. What one? I don't know what 8.8 is.
The correspondence item, the levy from the downtown, Smith Falls downtown.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Councillor Alfred.
That's okay.
Okay.
Just I couldn't go back and tell the chair I didn't get it.
Councillor Alfred is going to speak to correspondence item that we had on today's agenda. A letter from the Downtown Smith Falls Business Association requests to approve levy increase. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, because the chair of the DSFBA wouldn't forgive me if I didn't.
No, and I beg your forgiveness.
No.
Don't know what happened.
No, it's okay. So the chair was Chair Karen Burns was in front of council December 20th. Just on the Friday before that Monday meeting, she had heard that there was some feedback that some of our members had, and so she, in that meeting, you'll recall, she said, we're just going to pause here before we go ahead with the levy and see what this is about. And so there's been many discussions since that time, and the board has voted before that, but voted again to proceed. But in keeping with some of the feedback that the board received, they are opting to take more of a phased-in approach. In the case of, for the DSFBA, also the other piece of information is that we received a grant, which is going to help us with the operations and plans that the DSFBA has for 2022, which is the last year of the term. But they have made recommendations to, they will make recommendations to future council and future DSFBA board based on their experience of the last 4 years. So they are requesting that the DBA levy be increased by $25,000 in 2022, and then they're going to make recommendations, or they have in this letter made recommendations to council for 2023, when the new term begins. I'll answer any questions anybody has. I don't know what more I can tell you.
Thank you very much. Councillor McGuire has one. Go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Councillor Alfred. Yeah, it's been over 3 months since this first came to council. I'm really happy to see Karen's name on the letter still. So thank you, Karen, for continuing to serve on the DBA. To me, this is a DBA issue, and it's just process that we go forward with it. So the fact that the DBA has approved this, I wouldn't be comfortable going against the wishes of the DBA board. And the fact there's been 3 months between the last time it's come and now is a testament to all the conversations that's happened between them. So I'm happy to support this tonight and look forward to the increased resources and the value that's going to bring to our downtown.
Thank you for that. Mayor Panko?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I guess we respect the autonomy of the board to make the decisions regarding its levy. And let's remember too, I mean, in a rising cost environment, the DBA area is finite. It's not like it's green land that they're going to be developed into new buildings. There's very little opportunity for growth, even though we have seen some of the downtown. So I think I support their priority to hire a full-time coordinator and the need to also have money to do the events and the plans that they wish to proceed with. So I will support the recommendation as well.
Oh, Councillor Brennan, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm a little torn here, and you know, I would have hoped to get some clarity from staff in terms of, I mean, the tax bills have gone out, and there's really not, I don't see the rush here because it's not going to happen until, and so, maybe CEO or Morris can confirm that, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. So if you're going to bring it forward next week, hopefully I can get some answers before then, but I think it's a little rushed right now. So that's my opinion.
CEO Morris, do you want to make a comment to that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So my understanding is that we collect the DBA levy on the final property tax bills, which have not been issued. So they will go out to early summer and they are due in July or August. So it's not too late to do this and collect the monies in 2022, but there is time before the final tax bills are issued.
Can I just have, by show of hands again, who would like to bring this forward at our council meeting coming up? Support it? Okay, so we will do that then. And I think that is it. Could I have a motion for adjournment, please? Councillor Alfred, seconded by Councillor Brennan, all in favor? The recommended motion that the committee adjourn its proceedings at 7:10 p.m. and stand so adjourned until the next duly called committee meeting. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you when, Mayor Panko, we need 5 minutes.
Probably 5 minutes, yeah.
And we're going to stay on until then, or are we going out? We're going to go out and come back in, right?
So we've adjourned the meeting, so we'll just take 5 minutes just to get to all the
Just a break?
resolutions.
Okay, thank you.
So I simply need our movers